Hello, it's Amy, and I've just come back from a quick trip down to Book Bazaar here in Ottawa. I was running a few errands and I popped in and came back with 4 books here. And 2 of them are a couple of little essay collections, and the other 2 are books on books. And the seller at Cash mentioned that quite recently they got in a nice selection of books on books, and I think it was a fairly new addition to the things they sell, because I don't think I've ever found a dedicated section of books on books in Book Bazaar before. If it was there, it was well hidden behind a lot of books. I noticed they had done a lot of rearranging and tidying up, and things had shifted around. And I actually found these 2 essay collections right up at the front of the store, where there used to be an assortment of, full leather bound classics and a bunch of paperbacks. They had made it, the full leather bound classics, Eaton Press, Franklin Library, Folio Society, that sort of thing was all up at the front. And then underneath that top shelf were rows and rows of faux leather and real leather, early 20th century classics and little pocket editions, and then a bunch of small essay collections like this. So let's start with this one here. This is one that I bought mainly because the title caught my eye. It's called Tremendous Trifles. The author is G.K. Chesterton. We've got the author's signature reproduced on the front there. Just a cute little volume here. It looks like he's written several essay collections, and the name G.K. Chesterton does ring a bell from other reading I've done, but I don't think I've ever specifically purchased or read any of his works. And this one is in its 8th edition. So this is the 8th edition from 1925, but it was first published in a larger format in September of 1909. And they're described as sketches, and he's thanking the editor of the Daily News in the preface here for the permission to reprint these. And they are apparently something of a journal, and so they look quite fun to read through. Tremendous Trifles, a piece of chalk, an accident, the perfect game, the end of the world, in topsy-turvy land, the tower, the dragon's grandmother, the toy theater, the giant. And so these look quite fun to dig into, and I do love my late 19th and early 20th century essay collections. This one is in a bit of a rough shape. As you can see, it's almost like the front border is peeling, and I think perhaps it has in some sense because the spine is a completely different color. But this is called The Book of Good Friendship, and it appears to be a collection of essays, maybe some poetry in here as well, entirely on the subject of friendship. And we've got this fun little tipped in color illustration in the front here. Book of Good Friendship, 1912, with illustrations in color by H.C. Preston Magoon, RSW. And we've got blue font there. So this is from November of 1912, Turnbull and Spears printers in Edinburgh. And we've got pieces by various authors, I think. We've got Eustace Budgell, Friendship, The Wisdom of the Son of Sirach, Friends, William Cooper on Friendship, Jeremy Taylor, The Choice and Treatment of Friends, Samuel Johnson, Friendship and Ode. And so now, taking a closer look at this list of contents, I'm assuming it is a collection of previously published works because those names are certainly familiar. But we've got essays and various pieces throughout, and color illustration tipped into the back as well. Songs and Poems of Burn. There's some advertisements in the back. So that is the Book of Good Friendship. And after I finished looking through the essay collections in those books, I wandered over to the Canadian literature section, hoping I might come across some more graphic press. Nothing by graphic publishers today, but I did find a section of books on books, where I found a copy of Book Row, an anecdotal and pictorial history of the antiquarian book trade by Marvin Mondlane and Roy Meader. And it's got a plastic cover on it, so sorry about that reflection there. If I hold it here, I think you can see okay. But it's about the antiquarian book trade in New York City. And I do really enjoy reading books on books. And so this one was a no-brainer to pick up and bring home with me. We've got these end papers, nicely illustrated. And I can just read the synopsis on the front flap for you. New York City builds history on its streets, and every corner has its story. This one unfolds just south of 14th Street in Manhattan, mostly on the 7 blocks of 4th Avenue, bracketed by Union Square and Astor Place. There, for nearly 8 decades, from the 1890s to the 1960s, thrived a bibliophile's paradise. They called it the New York Booksellers' Row, or more commonly, Book Row. And it goes on to say how it's an American story, richly anecdotal history, memoir, so on and so forth. And then it talks a bit about the Strand. And so this will be interesting to dig into. And they also had The History of Reading by Alberto Manguel, and I've read a few books by Manguel in the past, and I've got 1 or 2 more that arrived recently that I'm going to read as well. But this one was only $15, and so I thought I would go ahead and pick it up. And so we just begin here. We begin on the last page. That's what the opening chapter is called, The Last Page. Read in order to live, Gustave Flaubert. Lots of good stuff in here. History of Reading is a rich and wonderful book, a treasure of knowledge, stories, and illustrations that takes us on an unforgettable journey. Infinitely engaging and amusing and sweeping. Oh, that's not telling us much. But I don't like when the flaps don't tell us much. It's just telling us that it's a good book. And then there's some biographical stuff about Manguel here. But we've got the last page, Learning to Read, the missing first page, Picture Reading, The Shape of the Book, Ordainers of the Universe, the Symbolic Reader. The author as a reader, the translator as a reader, end papers, the book Fool, forbidden reading. And so it just looked like a lot of wonderful chapters on reading from various perspectives and throughout history. So that's my little haul here. I am hanging in okay here in Ottawa. I did encounter a number of the protesters on my way to and from the bookshop. But the good news is, well, I don't know if it's good news. It's certainly satisfying to see some people of Ottawa are no longer just ignoring these honking trucks. Instead, I saw 4 or 5 different people as the trucks drove by. And I'm not talking about big trucks. This, quote, trucker protest includes some actual people with trucks, but it's mainly assholes in cars and pickup trucks with various flags, honking their horns and riding through the residential neighborhoods. But several of these trucks went down past the bookstore, past the restaurants, past people's houses, honking their horns, and several people of Ottawa on the sidewalks had had enough, and have started actively actively giving those trucks and cars the finger when they're honking and yelling "fuck you, go home," which I think it is time for them to go home. But I'll leave it here. I won't get too much into the problems of my own city, but I thought I would share with you my latest little book haul here.